Welcome back inside the bunker. It is Wednesday, July 23rd. I'm Kevin Bunk, as always, weekday for BTO Media. And today, joined by the incomparable Will Thompson, absolutely pumped pro scout for Prospects Live. You can check him out there. I put in the YouTube description and the Spotify description all of his contact info, or not contact info. You don't want to reach out to Will. All of his work that you can find. Do not contact him. But Will, thanks so much, man. I'm absolutely amped to do this today.
Oh, Kevin Bunk, I'm so fired up for this, man. A long time coming. I'm super fired up, and yeah, I guess you can put my contact info in the in the YouTube description. People could text me, call me, do whatever if I'm that big of a deal.
All right, if it goes that well today, I will put your contact info.
That's fine.
Down
We
below.
can do that.
First thing I want to talk to you about, you're a Sox guy, and we're going to dive into the Sox a lot later. We're going to talk about the Yankees later, but this AL East race, fascinating, surprising. I did not imagine it would be this close. You have 4 teams within 6.5 games, 4 teams that are really exciting to watch too, and fun, energetic. What have been your overall thoughts here? Who do you think wins this? What do you think of these teams?
Well, it's certainly been surprising because I was very low on the Blue Jays coming into this year because it seemed like they were just trying to run back the same group that has not had the same core that has not had very much success in the sense of that they were 500 or on the doorstep of the playoffs. But I mean, it's a team that when they did make the playoffs, they lost to Seattle at home in that wild card series. They lost to Minnesota. They got swept by them. And it was just a core that was kind of disappointing and didn't have. And I don't know if there was some sort of some energy that when they extended Vladdy that really galvanized the whole team. But I mean, they've gotten the emergence of Addison Barger has been huge for that lineup. And as a team, and and everyone, I see it all the time, like, oh, the baseball now has just become home run or strikeout. You know who doesn't do home run or strikeout? The Toronto Blue Jays, and that's why they're good. And they run the bases really well. They pitch, they throw strikes. They've gotten some the bullpen, which looked to be pretty bad coming into the year, has been solid for them overall. So I think the Blue Jays emergence to me has been really surprising. And the Yankees, I guess. I do think the Yankees are still the most talented team in the division, and I would still pick them to win the division, I think, but certainly they've had their own struggles of late, and we certainly, I'm sure we'll get more into that. And the Red Sox and the Rays are both kind of hanging around, but I don't think that either of them are on the level of the Blue Jays or the Yankees. It's just with certain consistency. The Rays right now have had they've had a chance with they've had a really easy schedule. They had Baltimore at home, they had the White Sox at home, and they haven't really taken advantage of it to try and catapult themselves back into it. I mean, Junior Caminero has been great, but a lot of their hot streak has relied on their starting pitching, and Shane Baz becoming better. He's taken a little bit of a step back. Thought they were going to get Shane McClanahan back. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. Another setback for him. So it's been a wild race, and there's a lot, and I think there's going to be a lot of it determined by who does what at the trade deadline.
Before the season, Mike and I do a prediction show, as every other podcast in the world does. And we go through the divisions and the playoff brackets and everything. And 5 of the 6 divisions, I got absolutely dead wrong already. Like, it's just
Exactly.
It's so cooked. I picked the Royals to win the Central. I picked the Rangers to be the 1 seed. And then I got everything wrong in the National League except for the chalk in the NL West. But the AL East, I was right on with these teams. So I've been having 5 Yankees in first, Blue Jays in second, Red Sox third, Rays fourth, Orioles last. I picked the Orioles to be the second worst team in the AL, which is not going to happen.
How'd you do that? I would love to know the reasoning on that.
So this is why
I'm the only ones.
I bring this up every episode now because it's my only successful prediction of the prediction show, which is about 2 hours long. And I only bring up this one instead of all the incorrect ones. The reason I was so out on Baltimore this year was because I thought the morale would just possibly be. Let me preface with this. I was more so high on the other 4 teams, but Baltimore I thought the morale was just going to be dead after the offseason they had. You got the new owners last year. It's supposed to be this
Mhm.
great, exciting thing. Now you're through 2 years with no playoff wins. In both seasons, you should have at least pulled away one win with the talent the teams had. A
Yeah.
failed division race last year, everything that went into it, the bad second half for Adley. And I just thought you lose Burns, you lose Santander, and you only bring in really Charlie Morton and Tyler O'Neill. Like, how is the
Right.
morale positive in that building? And I also thought that Holiday was going to be awful, but he hasn't been. So that's been the one
Mhm.
positive for Baltimore. But yeah, I'm still shocked that they haven't made that run yet. The Orioles, even as bad as I thought they were going to be, I thought there was going to be a 10 or 11 game run in this that made you think they might be back, and it just doesn't look like it's going to happen ever.
Yeah, they like they had a run for they had like a little bit of a run where it looked where I forget the exact numbers, but maybe they had won like 9 out of 12
Mhm.
or something like that. I mean, yeah, the reality is like their stars just their stars have either been hurt or haven't really performed. And that's when for a team that was really going to come into the season relying on their lineup and trying to patch together starting pitching because hey, you're right about the new ownership, and I thought I'm like, oh, this is perfect. They have this young core, new ownership coming in. This is where they're going to spend, and yeah, like probably not as much on the offensive side because they had so many prospects, and they still do on the offensive side, but pitching just hasn't really been there. And if you're going to let Corbin Burns walk, listen, Arizona gave him a ton of money. That contract is probably not going to age great, but you still got to have some sort of replacement that's not Charlie Morton or Sugano or guys that if they work out perfectly are your fours or fives in the rotation. Um, and you just think you can recreate them in the aggregate, and the death blow has really been Grayson Rodriguez,
Yep.
who was thought that he was going to come back maybe in the beginning of June around there, and it's just been setback after setback. He hasn't even gone out on a rehab. There's another setback, I think. So it's just been one of those years for the Orioles. But I guess you're right in the sense that their starting pitching wasn't very good, so it probably picking them to win 100 games probably was never going to happen again. But I definitely didn't think they were going to be this bad, so I'll give you credit for that.
And I also thought Batista was going to be terrible, and he hasn't even been terrible. I mean, he's one of the valuable guys at the deadline, and that if they were to move, you probably get a
Mhm.
nice haul back. We'll talk deadline a little bit later, though. Let's focus on the Yankees here. You're a scout. That's what you love to do is scouting. I got to know your opinion on Spencer Jones because I have no idea what to think of this guy. In the last week, I've made 3 videos on social media about Spencer Jones, and I'm kind of baiting Yankee fans to see. It's like taking their temperature here. I did one of you can potentially trade Spencer Jones for Keller and for Brian Hayes or IKF in that Pittsburgh scenario. You can not trade Spencer Jones because he's a complete untouchable. And then do you trade Spencer Jones now in the offseason, or is he your starting outfielder next year? And on
Mhm.
all 3 videos, I got absolutely ripped apart by Yankee fans because nobody is happy with any of the possible outcomes on Spencer Jones. And I have no
No,
idea what to think of him when you look at the numbers.
he is. I guess he's the most confusing prospect I think I've looked at in quite a long time because he spent close to almost 2 years in Somerset in Double A. So I got to watch a lot of him when I lived in New Jersey. And to be honest with you, when I saw him in person, at first I loved him because I'm like, oh, if you can make a little more contact, like you can definitely play him in center field. He's a great athlete and he has tons of raw power. And then last year, over the full year in Double A, Jones just the power was good, but it has to be great in order to supplement the strikeout rate that he's inevitably going to have. And I think that's the one thing that we can all agree on Spencer Jones with. He's going to strike out a lot. But I think but this year he has made he's tweaked his stance a million times trying to find something that works, and it looked like at first it looked ridiculous, like because he's changed his stance like 5 times, and in times like two, when you change your stance like 2 or 3 times and then it just looks more weird, uh it's a lot of everyone's like, what are you doing? But then he found something that worked and got it to click, was really good to finish in Somerset. And obviously everyone's been talking about what he's been doing in Scranton. And when I look at Jones, I think I give him a better chance than a lot of people do at being a good big leaguer. And the reason I say that is because he is an above average defensive center fielder. And so no matter what, even if he's striking out a lot, if he is hitting for power, and he'll play you at a well above average defensive center field, that is really valuable to any big league team. And you see guys all the time who are playing center field for big league teams who can't hit at all, who don't give you anything. And that's not Spencer Jones. What makes Jones so unique in the fact, as far as what, his strengths and weaknesses, is he really struggles against velocity. He really struggles against fastballs. He's a longer limb guy, so the swing is naturally a little bit longer, and it's tougher to catch up to velocity. And I think so far, even in Scranton, even on this unbelievable run, he's swinging and missing at 40% of fastballs that he sees, which is really concerning and a really high number. However, against breaking balls and sliders and spin, he is swinging and missing around, I think, like 27 or 28%. So he's crushing breaking balls and off speed, and he's just demolishing it. And he's not swinging and missing it much at it. That's a below average whiff rate against spin and off speed pitches. So the question I ask myself is, okay, if this is a weird profile guy who does not make contact on very many fastballs, but on anything else he crushes, and when he makes contact, the metrics are through the roof. Is there a comparable guy in the big leagues who swings and misses at that many fastballs but is still successful? The answer, it's a small group, but the answer is yes. And the top one is Rafael Devers. And Rafael Devers is a guy who will swing and miss, I think, around 38 to 40% of fastballs, but he crushes anything off speed. And that is the type of guy that you're obviously different positions, and there's certainly way more defensive value with Jones. But that's what he's shooting for. The problem is, if he's swinging and missing at 40% of AAA fastballs, what does that mean when you're seeing 97 every night? And I think that's the question that we don't really know with Jones, but at least you know that he's going to give you the defense. And if he can cut the fastball whiff rate even to 35%, it changes the profile a lot, because the power that he has is ridiculous. You can't throw the production out the window.
Yankee fans like to do the Aaron Judge comparison, like the lefty Judge thing, which is so outlandish. So, yeah, I mean, we're at the point with Judge, too, where you want to compare anyone to him. It's ridiculous. You just can't do it. But I have openly always been a very casual prospect follower, minor league baseball follower. I'm not a huge fan of it. Does it not feel like, and I know this is a tough name for Yankee fans to hear, does it not feel like there's a little Joey Gallo in here, but Texas Joey Gallo, where you're going to get a good outfielder, you're going to get 30, 35 plus home runs every year. OPS might be a little over 800, but you won't get the contact and the on-base percentage that you maybe desire, which doesn't make him a bad baseball player. You just have to make sure the right pieces are around him to supplement those numbers.
Yeah, I think certainly if you're comparing him to the Yankees Joey Gallo, I think that would be a pretty disastrous outcome. But as far as if you're looking at prime Joey Gallo, I'd say the basic profile, yes, but the difference between Jones and Gallo is Gallo walked a ton. And Gallo, whenever, pitches in the zone, he would either swing and miss or he'd hit it really far. But he would very rarely expand and chase out of the zone. Jones does not have that same type of plate discipline, and that's something that also concerns me a little bit. If you're going to be a 3 true outcome guy who plays a very good defensive center field, I'm good with that. You have a spot, and as you pointed out, Kevin, that's where you say we can find a spot for this guy as long as we supplement the pieces around him that more contact based guys will put the ball in play. and that's where that conversation comes. But the thing that worries me with Jones is he does chase out of the zone a good amount. I think so far in AAA, it's been around 33%, which is, it's not terrible, but it's not great. And that's what concerns me. And I think what differentiates him and Gallo, but certainly I guess in a broader scope, yes, but to replicate what that prime Texas Joey Gallo was, who was undoubtedly a good player in that time. The difference is the plate discipline and the ability to draw a walk, which Jones hasn't really showed yet as far as his plate discipline and chasing out of the zone.
I think going into these next couple of weeks, Brian Cashman is in the most unique position in all of baseball, not only because his team is on that outside part of being contenders with a few pieces that they like big pieces that they have to fill and big holes in their lineup, but he also has this top trade chip because they're pretty open about not wanting to move George Lombard, which I am totally fine with. And that's the Yankees' one big prospect right now that I think they have to hold. But with Spencer Jones, teams are going to ask for him. And Cashman, 2 months ago, probably would have thrown him in a deal without losing sleep at night. But now, because I was saying the whole beginning of the season, like, just get rid of the kid. And I liked him at Vanderbilt. He's one of the few Yankees draft picks where I knew him in college. And I would now be hesitant to move him at the deadline, but I wouldn't hesitate to move him in the offseason. I don't know if the players and the prices at this deadline are going to be worth getting rid of him here. But then again, you have what Joel Sherman said yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, but he said on his podcast with John Heyman, he said, I don't know if I'd ever run the risk of this guy being a 55 home run hitter anywhere else. And that's very unlikely, and he admits that. But Cashman's in a tough spot here with how you evaluate Spencer Jones. What would you be thinking approaching this deadline with Jones?
So you're certainly right that Cashman is in the most damned if you do, damned if you don't, most clear scenario of that ever. Because if he holds on to Jones and he isn't able to improve these contact issues that he has, and I'll just use a broader Joey Gallo example, and that's the player he becomes. Everyone's going to rip him for not you had him at peak value right before the deadline. Which is something that most contending GMs dream of, to have a prospect going or a heater like Jones has right in the month of July and approaching the deadline. I think to me it's all about it's all about what you can get in return. And I think the move. I think the move for the Yankees, certainly if there was a chance they could get in Eugenio Suarez, Jones is probably going to have to be in that deal. If they're going to get Mitch Keller, Jones will probably have to be in that deal. If you're going anywhere else, I mean, certainly if they're the biggest kind of murky name that's out there that could really shake up this deadline is Joe Ryan of Minnesota, and I would have to think. I mean, it would have to be more than just Jones, I think, to get Joe Ryan. I mean, that's where you're talking Schlittler, who I don't think the Yankees should. I wouldn't move at all if I were the Yankees. I think Schlittler's really good, and I would really. I hesitate to use the word untouchable because you never know what you could be offered, but I would really try to hold on to Schlittler. As far as Jones, I would not consider him untouchable, and I think that I would move him in the right deal, because you also have to look at it from this perspective, Kevin, of like further beyond that, is Spencer Jones worth this guy? Yes or no? But you also have to look for next year. What are you planning on doing with Cody Bellinger? That's good, because Bellinger to me has been, over the last 2 months, has been one of the most underrated players in the game. He has been phenomenal on both. I mean, certainly with the bat and hitting for power and the defense that he's provided at different outfield spots. I would think the Yankees are going to have to make a move to try to extend it, whether that comes now or whether that comes in the offseason. I don't think, are you really going to let Bellinger walk in order to get Spencer Jones in the lineup? I don't think I'd do that, because I think there's good spots with Dominguez. Now, do you put moving Bellinger to first base as part of the equation? Maybe, but I don't know if I want to lose I don't know, that would kind of diminish his value in my opinion and lose him and lose a lot of what he provides in the outfield defensively. So personally, I think you don't know, as good as the player as Aaron Judge is, you don't know how long he is going to be this otherworldly talent. And especially with a down American League, the time is now to go to overpay a little bit for to overpay for someone at the deadline to try and win a World Series. The time is now for the Yankees, and I think they have the talent to do it. And I don't think I would let how good Jones has been recently. I would be comfortable moving him in a deal that you're confident can make your team better. I would not consider him untouchable.
Yeah, completely agree. As a fan of the team, what a shame. And just as a fan of baseball, even if you take yourself out of a Yankees lens, it would be a real shame if you look back on any of these next couple of years of Judge's career and say they did not do everything they could to win a title. That's why when people bring
Yeah.
up trade Grisham, trade Goldschmidt, this team's not winning it anyways, just get what you can for these guys who won't be back next year, it's absolutely not the way to go about your
No.
business. And in Brian Cashman's defense, and I have not been the biggest defender of him the last few years, but
Mhm.
he has done a fairly good job of making sure, not that his farm system's always elite, but making sure he always has enough guys so that he's not in bad positions at the deadline and in the offseason. He always has a good enough stable, and he always replenishes it enough. And to be fair, Caleb Durbin's the first guy in a while that the Yankees have traded as a prospect and ended up looking pretty good somewhere else. They usually do a good
Yeah.
job of evaluating their own guys.
Yeah, and Dirt, I'll be honest, I was as far as the Durbin example specifically, I thought he was a good player, but to me, I wasn't that confident. I wasn't that confident he's going to be able to hit, and he didn't for a little bit. He's gotten hot recently, so I think that's a good example. But I'm still higher on. I still like Devin Williams. I think
I'd make the trade 10 times out of 10. Again, even with the
it makes
4.5
sense.
ERA.
Right, exactly. And ultimately, you're trying to win a World Series, and the thing that you can't do anything about is regret. If Judge in 3 or 4 years from now, not saying he becomes a bad player, but he regresses. Like, hey, he's more of a 270 hitter with 30 to 35 home, which is pretty awesome. But that's not going to carry you to a World Series the way that what he's playing like now currently does. And I just think when you look around the American League, it's not great now, but it could get better. And it could 2-3 years from now, it could be a lot different. There are a lot of teams that are on the rise. Detroit's got a good core, and they got a phenomenal farm system. When Houston gets all these arms back eventually, they're a good team as well. And when they try and get Yordan Alvarez back in the fold, they have half their team out. But Seattle, you never want to count out Seattle, especially if they make a trade for Suarez and he plays well, and they have the pitching and young pitching to supplement anything. I think you never know when you're going to have the chance again to really contend for a World Series with a prime Judge. And that's why I don't, as good as Spencer Jones is, there's no way that I could consider him untouchable at the deadline. And yes, are you running the risk that he goes somewhere else and hits 45, 50 home runs in a season? Yeah, you are. But that's a risk I would feel comfortable taking, because it's rooted in trying to win a World Series. Like, do you think the Yankees know certainly about this? You think the Cubs for 1 second regret trading Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman? I guarantee you they don't.
Yep.
So I think it would be. I think Cashman needs to be aggressive, and you're right. There's enough. The farm system as a whole isn't great, but there's enough guys at the top that teams will be interested in to make a move at the deadline, and their development system is pretty good when it comes to, especially arms to replenish and make more.
Let's talk for a second about VOLPE, who is just in the middle of like anybody's hell, where you grew up rooting for this team, you live local. He's getting ripped every day on every local station, network, platform, everywhere. Yankee fans can't stand him, and he's obviously mentally just shot at this point. I've been saying for 2 years now, it's disgraceful that he has not gotten at least a week in AAA at some point. And it's not a knock on him, it's a knock on management and the front office, because he's been in so many funks. He's been in a 3-year funk since he came up with the Yankees. And I don't know if he's supposed to be this great player. I don't know if going to AAA would help him with anything. But how would you handle a guy who is struggling like this? He can't do anything right because now the defense is completely gone too. Nothing's going right for him. He's not running the bases well this year. He's not hitting at all in his entire career. How would you handle him if you were in charge of Yankee player development?
I think right now, to answer the question directly, I don't think at the moment there's a whole lot you can do, because who comes in behind him? Who's going to play shortstop behind you? Like Oswald Peraza, like, people bang on Volpe, but Peraza has been worse. And the first game of the Yankee Blue Jay series, obviously he makes a big error. Volpe makes a big error. I think the problem with Volpe is that if you go back and look, and when Volpe was a top prospect, go back and look at his minor league numbers. He never tore the cover off the ball in the minor leagues. There was a lot of projection, a lot of tools. Like the bat speed was elite, and he could really run. He could steal bases. And I think when you try and compare what people thought Volpe was going to be when he was a prospect to now, I don't think it's as much the offense that I worry about, because he's still hitting for some power. He's going to give you, because if you take the name Anthony Volpe away and you take the whole New York Yankees shortstop thing away, and you say you can have a Gold Glove defensive shortstop who will probably hit like 230, but it'll hit you 20 to 25 home runs. He'll steal you 35 to 40 bases. Would you not take that? I mean, that you absolutely have to take that as a shortstop in the big leagues. But the problem is now that you're right, the base running has gone down significantly. He's a below average base runner for when he used to be elite. He's not stealing bases at the same clip he was. And while I don't think at least the numbers say he hasn't regressed to a horrible defensive player, he's certainly not as good as he was. And he's, I guess, slightly below average is the most accurate way to put it. He's still young. He's still just turned 24 years old and stuff like this. And, there can be late bloomers as to far who are going to become stars. Joe Adell's a good example of that with the Angels. But it's definitely a tough situation right now for Volpe. And to me, I'm not as worried about the offense, and kind of if he is what he is there, but he has some power and the tools are still there. I just question where the other stuff went. And because if he's going to play you slightly below average defense, doesn't steal you many bases, isn't a great base runner, then his value, then the whole hitting 220 thing becomes, then now I'm a lot more concerned. So I think you just got to look at in the context, and I think the offense will get a little bit better, but defensively, and whether it's mental or not, I can't speak to that, but defensively and base running is where Volpe really made his mark as a prospect, and we just haven't seen it this year, and it has unquestionably hurt this Yankees team in this stretch that they're on.
I think with Volpe, for me, what's disappointed the most is he was coming up at a time where the Yankees weren't very athletic, and I was excited to get that athletic young shortstop come in, and to this day, they've never needed him to be an 800 OPS guy and one of the better offensive players. They don't need that. They needed the defense, which they got for 2 years, and they're not getting it after the first 2 months this year because he still started strong defensively. But I was hoping they were going to get a 330, 340 on base guy, no matter how he did it, whether he hit 2 home runs or 40 home runs en route to that number and steal 35 plus bases. And we're not even close to that. We're at a career on base of 287. He's never been over 300 on base in a career. Right now, he's 284. and only 10 stolen bases on the season. He's lucky if he gets to 20. So this entire, statistical like study that we've been able to do now in Volpe through 400 plus games is really discouraging to me, just where the positives are and where the negatives are, because I'd rather the negatives be in the slug and in the home run numbers, and I'd rather this be one of the guys that I do care about his average, because I do want him to hit 280, but all singles. That's the type of player I hope they got, and they have not gotten that at all.
Right. I think I guess when looking at what Volpe did in the minor leagues, I think and I understand, like, when you look at as an athletic shortstop, it would be ideal you would rather have a guy who would get on base more to use his speed than a guy who's, maybe he hits more home runs this way, but he doesn't get to use the rest of his tools and his ability to steal bases and his ability to go first to third. He doesn't get to use that as much. But at least when Volpe has never been a guy, like, there's never been a point where he's hit over 300, or he's even really hit 280, 290, even in the minors. That's just hasn't really been his game. He always has been able to hit for power. But the contact skills, it's not like they've really disappeared, because even if you look at his minor league numbers, he's hitting around 240 to 260, depending on the stop and the stint. I mean, I think there was one stint, like in high A or something, right before he got promoted to Double A, where he was crushing the ball, which is fine. But at least in the upper levels, he was never a guy that was a super high average guy. So that's why when I kind of say he is what he is what he is offensively, I agree. And like I wish he would walk a little more. He doesn't walk a lot. And he's an aggressive hitter by nature, but I think the regression defensively and running the bases, and that's really what the Yankees need badly. And if he hasn't been able to provide it, they have enough offense. They'll be fine. Mm-hmm. With the defense and the athleticism and running the bases, they need that from him, and he hasn't been able to provide it lately.
Do you think it's important, because this is a stance I've been on the last few weeks, do you think it's important for them not only to get a starting third baseman, but also to find a guy like IKF? I know another name Yankee fans don't want, but I want him back on the Yankees. And is it important to do that so that you can give him days off in the second half and make sure you have a left side of the infield that doesn't include Volpe sometimes, but also doesn't include Peraza or Vivas, who have both been awful at the plate also, as well?
Right. Yeah, I think IKF would be a pretty good pickup. It's not the sexy pickup. It's not Eugenio Suarez, who has 36 home runs already this season. It's not the big sexy pick, but what it is you're right. He can fill any position. He makes contact. He puts the ball in play. I mean, you can even when Yankee fans were I know they don't love IKF for his last stint, and I can't promise that you can't promise that won't happen again going from Pittsburgh to New York. It's inevitable that it's just different. But I think you're onto something. I think IKF would be decent. And honestly, if I were Cashman, as good as Eugenio Suarez is, and he is, I don't think that obviously he helped solve it. They're adding more home runs to the mix is never a bad thing. But I think adding a guy like IKF, adding a guy like Ryan McMahon, and someone who is going to give you very good defense at third, would be for not as much of the cost. Prospect wise, where you can use that to go, where you can use the other prospects to help the bullpen, which really needs help. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a better use of your assets than going to get Suarez, because as good as he is, he doesn't help you become more athletic. He doesn't help you running the bases. He doesn't help you defensively. And so I think there are cases where, for example, like Seattle or the Cubs, that I can see Suarez being a perfect fit. The Yankees, it's a good fit, but it's not the thing that he doesn't help them with their needs as much, I don't think.
And I think the risk with Suarez is so much greater than everybody else, because forget even the package are going to give up being greater than the rest of the packages, but you're looking at a guy that if he doesn't hit, if he goes through that slump in the second half of the year, you get nothing from him, which is basically what
And
you
he's
just
gone.
said. But you get nothing from him, and then he's gone.
2 months.
Whereas, even Brian Hayes, I don't really want him. He's not my first choice to play for the Yankees because the hitting, the offensive numbers are just so bad. It's so concerning, and there's nothing there. But when he's not hitting, which he's probably not going to hit, I know I'm getting elite defense, and I know I'm getting more athletic at third. And Suarez doesn't give me either of those things as the insurance policy if he's not hitting. And you hit it on the head. The Yankees don't actually need any more offense as much as the fans really want it. They did this whole run prevention. They don't, yeah, exactly. They're top 3 in everything. As much as they did this run prevention thing this offseason to replace Soto, they got Fried, which was great. That's worked out great for them. They thought that they got better defensively, and they probably did with Bellinger because he's so great defensively, and Goldschmidt certainly is no downgrade from what they had last year with Rizzo, but he's actually been much better. But the run prevention still has been a huge problem because the left side of their infield with Volpe and this third base spot have been so bad. That's what's losing them games. Their bullpen's been awful too. I got to see them go after defense here. You have to see them go for defense at this deadline.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's got to be, not only would that be the better value play, and I know Cashman likes to thread the, like, kind of, play in between the margins sometimes. Like, he kind of picks his spots when he goes and splurges for a Max Fried, which, I mean, honestly, he usually splurges for starting pitching and tries to play more in between the margins on the offensive side. But I agree. I think I think becoming more athletic, and if you, man, like, there are some spots where you can hide bad defenders. Third base and shortstop are not one of those. Are not, the left side of the infield is not a spot you can do that. And so I think that's got to be the priority. And again, like, you look at, like, I'm a big fan of Jazz Chisholm. I think he's very good. And having him at second is great. And, like, there's, you're getting the offensive production. Stanton's been really good since coming back. Bellinger's getting hot. And you have whoever you have playing first base, like Goldschmidt or Rice, like, both of them, you can at least rely on them. And obviously Rice with the big swing to beat Toronto in the second game of that series. But I think getting more athletic it has to be the top priority. And even though it's not the sexy trade deadline pickup, I think that a lot of fans want to see, I think it helps fill the need of what is preventing them from winning a World Series right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And last thing I want to talk to you with the Yankees is 2 of the other young guys in the pros right now, in the bigs, Dominguez and Rice. Where are you at with both of these guys? Because giving you totally different feelings this year with Dominguez and Rice. I mean, Dominguez was the more highly touted guy. He's been more so disappointing for me, but still you cannot be out on him. And then Rice has been everything you could have hoped. Basically what you would have expected his ceiling was before the season, with Stanton being out. He got the extended run at DH. Now he's in that platoon spot with Goldschmidt at first base, and he's been awesome. 800 OPS. He's got 32 RBIs, 15 homers. You can't ask for more from your backup first baseman. Where are you at with these 2 guys and their roles moving forward? Because you also alluded to it before. It's crowded, especially if they keep Jones next year in that outfield and then first base, because Bellinger's a guy you have to have back.
Yeah, I agree. I think you got to bring Bellinger back. As far as Ben Rice, I'm really high on the player. I think if there was a guy that was perfectly made for Yankee Stadium, it's Ben Rice, because he just pulls and he pulls and lifts. That's all he does. And it is a swing perfectly made for Yankee Stadium. He had that rut kind of in the middle of the season where he was hitting the ball on the ground too much. But I really like what Ben Rice gives to this Yankees offense. He makes good swing decisions. He plays a solid defensive first base when he's in there, and I know it's tough because I mean the Yankees have to have the best first base platoon, quote unquote, in the game, and it's funny because Ben Rice can catch sometimes, and even though it's definitely not great back there, and I love Ben Rice, and I never thought I would see a world where he's catching big league games, but he is, and he does everything else well. I'm a really big fan of Ben Rice, and I think I've seen some talk on social media, Yankees Twitter, whatever, of like do you trade Rice? Do you trade Rice to help your other needs? I wouldn't, and that's not, and I would hold out with this awkward type of platoon through the year, because then Goldschmidt's not back, and then it's Rice's job, and you don't want to be left in a position, especially at first base, where you have to get offensive production, that Rice and not to have him there. So I really like Rice. Dominguez, I think is I think you got to consider him offensively this year a success, because he's still really young. And he's gotten a lot better. He can hit for power. I like what I'm seeing from Dominguez overall. The defense is not very good. Even when he was coming up as a prospect, I got to watch him a lot. The defense, even in center, was not very good. So that to me isn't super surprising. But I do like he can run. And I like him. I like him at the plate. He's a guy that I would not want to move anywhere. And I think he's just a guy that you're patient with and you let develop. And certainly you don't want to be in a situation where you're really relying on Dominguez as one of your top 2 or 3 run creators. Then that's going to be a problem. But I think as far as like a guy in the middle to bottom of the order, I think Dominguez is a pretty solid option. I think you got to consider this year a success compared to what it could have been. And
with the two of them, it goes right back to the Spencer Jones conversation, and then we will move off the Yankees, I promise, because you already have good players in each of them. I mean, if Jones came up next year and gave you 83 games of Ben Rice's exact slash line, Yankee fans are going nuts. They're like, this guy is the second coming. This guy is Lefty Judge, blah, blah, blah. And while none of that's true anyways, it's because Rice wasn't a big prospect, they don't have that same feeling about him because he wasn't that hyped up guy coming up through the minor leagues. And people talk about him almost like his numbers are way worse than they are. And I don't know.
It shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter at all.
No.
I don't know if that's just a Yankee fan thing, because I'm so involved with the Yankee community more than everybody else, but the hype that gets carried, we're going to talk in a minute about the Mets, but like Francisco Alvarez is kind of the same way, but opposite. Like we compare him to Volpe sometimes, just in the sense that there's a lot of fans that are so attached to him because he's the big prospect, but there's other young players that have been way better that you have to start to become attached to because they're actually guys who can contribute to winning.
I mean, heck, look at Cam Schlittler and what he's been able to do. Cam Schlittler was a 7th or 8th round pick. I mean, that's where you win. Like that's where the good organizations move to the top, is when you're able to develop. I mean, Rice went in the 12th round or something like that. I mean, it's just insane. And you're right. It really shouldn't be that way. But again, like when people are saying, "Oh, Volpe," why Volpe needs to be, I don't know. Like I hear A-Rod and Michael Kay saying that like Volpe needs to just slap the ball the other way. Like, guess what? Anthony Volpe has never done that in his entire career.
And as if it's so easy too. He's like, he's got to be a 300 hitter. Like it's so easy to get your average of 70 points from what you traditionally hit.
Yeah, like what? Like who's? I don't know how many qualified hitters in the big leagues this year have 300 averages. It's not many. I can probably count
like 8 or 9. Yeah,
I can definitely count with both my hands. It's just a lot harder now. And again, when Volpe was coming up, I know I've said it before, he was never a 290, 300 hitter ever at any point. So I don't know. it's just a matter of I know that that a lot of Yankee Twitter when it comes to they're playing off what they hear, which you understand. But guys like Rice, I don't know. Like I watched Rice in Somerset a ton, and he homered every game like that. And I'm like, holy crap! Like he's a 12th round pick, and I knew a little bit about him because he was on the same summer ball team that I worked for on the Cape, so I got to know him a little bit. Not, by the way, amazing human, great A plus human, the one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But he he was just mashing, and you gotta look at performance, and the strides of player development systems. It's not as much about where you're drafted as people think. It's about like what these specific development systems can get out of you, and that's what they've done with Cam Schlittler. I mean, Cam Schlittler, he's a Northeastern guy, as you know, Kevin, and when I saw him like his last year at Northeastern before he got drafted, he was, big frame, but he was probably up to 92. Like his body's kind of dangling all over the place. Like it looks pretty bad. And then I go see him in Somerset a year and a half later, and he knows how to use his body. He's throwing 98.
Yeah.
Like, so it's more
good.
about I think he's really good.
Even last night, he had a shaky second start. He was awesome in his first start. First start, you saw everything that you could have wanted. And last night, he was a little shaky. Toronto's got a great lineup, though. And I think he struggled at times just navigating the good veteran hitters in two strike counts because they don't strike out at all. Yep. But you still saw like the maturity of the young pitcher, and you see the flashes. I agree with you that you don't want to call anybody untouchable completely, but I would have a really hard time trading him. I'd opt to trade Ben Hess, who on most prospect lists is higher, but right now it's tough to say that that Schlittler's not the Yankees' top pitching guy because we've seen him do it now twice, and he's been awesome before he got to Major League Baseball. So Schlittler looks great.
He's very good.
Very excited about him. Let me quick, before we go into the Red Sox, total segue back up to weeks ago, MLB draft. You did great coverage, Prospects Live. You were doing the live stream with the crew there. I don't follow the MLB draft. I am a Yankees fan, so it's never a relevant topic, really, Major League Baseball's draft. How shocking were the first two picks? Like, actually, is this like an insane start to the draft?
It was unexpected. I will say that it was not the way that anybody thought it was. Anybody thought it was going to go. So for the record, and I'm not a betting man at all. If I remember seeing that going into the draft that Cade Anderson was like minus 300 to be the first pick. If you bet on the number one pick in the MLB draft at minus 300 odds, you were an idiot. Like just straight up. Like all this, so many things can happen. I think Eli Willits at number one with Washington. It was surprising but not shocking because they did get underslot him by quite a bit. I think he only got paid like $8.5 million. So like Ethan Holiday got a bigger signing bonus at 4 with the Rockies than Eli Willits did at 1 with the Nationals. They saved that money later on in the draft to get some high school guys that they wanted, and that's certainly a strategy to go about. I think Willits. I do think that there were a lot of teams that everyone I've talked to that was in that top 7 or 8 of the draft. It was like, oh, if Willits gets us, we're taking him. And I was watching for it. I'm like, and then all of a sudden he goes at 1. I'm like, well, I didn't expect that, but I know all these teams loved him, so I think it wasn't that surprising. I was really surprised at number 2 with Tyler Bremner.
I guess it felt like Anderson was the layup, from my understanding, right?
It was.
And then they go Bremner, who it's not even like Anderson's the lefty. He gives, because I watched him at LSU too. He gives you everything you want in the top pick of the draft, and then you get him at 2. But like that felt like the bigger shock than Willits.
Oh, big time. Yeah, that was the biggest. I think in my mock draft, which was definitely too low, I shouldn't have had Bremner this low. It was just a matter of, like what teams did I think were going to go for college pitching? I think I had Bremner at 22. And so
and so even if that's too low, 2 is way too high for that to end up being the pick.
And he's better than the 22nd best player in the draft. I want to put that out there. I don't think he's the 22nd best player in the draft. I think he's pretty good. But I was surprised. I thought he was probably like the fifth best starting pitcher in the draft. But from what I was from the teams that I've talked to after the draft, I think teams and like their front offices valued Bremner more than I think a lot of the publications and the media did. So I think there's something to be said for that, that there were going to be other teams in that top 10 that if Bremner was still there, they were going to take him. I think the big thing with Bremner though is that he's got a really good changeup. Fastball is increased a lot of ride and carry up in the zone, but the this year specifically, but the breaking ball, the slider is not very good, and a lot of teams from the teams that I've talked to, they're most teams now are confident they can teach somebody a slider or a sweeper. They're confident, like, hey, we can teach you how to spin the ball, but we can't teach you how to throw hard. I mean, well, you can improve, but you can certainly improve velocity, but they can teach. They're gambling on the fact that they can teach you how to spin the ball. The problem is, I don't like the Angels as far as, are they the ones who can do that? I have my doubts. So we'll see how
We've
that
seen it
goes.
so many times in the past with their development.
I mean, we'll see how that goes. I watched the Angels AAA team this past week, and there's not a lot of help on the way. So we'll see.
Last thing on the draft, we
Yeah.
spoke about it on here, but both Mike and myself are once again not big into the process of everything. We don't totally understand it. How much does Mike Rizzo's firing just before the draft actually influence anything the Nationals are going to do on draft day, especially with the first pick?
I honestly don't think it impacted it at all.
Okay, that's what we thought too.
I think the only way going into the draft, even though Rizzo is really involved a lot more than other GMs, because there's other GMs that hey, they're analytics guys, so they aren't like, they're, of course they give the final stamp, but they're not super involved in the process. That's usually your amateur scouting director and other members of your front office. Rizzo is a scout, so he was very involved in it. However, there's a big team in these discussions, especially when you have the first overall pick and you've been on the clock for months. I find it hard to believe that Rizzo is infatuated with somebody else, and then he gets fired a week before, and then everyone does high fives around the front office and says, yeah, we get to pick Eli Willits now. I think Willits was their guy. I think Willits was the guy from the start. Now, the only thing that could have happened, and I was wondering, is if when there's an interim GM running the show, okay, does the owner now come in and say, this is who I want us to take? Then if that happens and the owner says, I want Kate Anderson, I watched him pitch in the College World Series and throw a complete game shutout, I want that guy on my team. Then you can't prepare for that. The owner can always do that. But I don't think, as far as it looks like, that they still let that front office make the pick and make the decisions there. I think Willits was probably Rizzo's guy, and I don't think that it changed anything, honestly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Let's head back to normal Major League Baseball. And the Red Sox, obviously 2 months ago, a little less, trade Devers. Feelings are all over the place at that point. But now I think it's hard, because they had the big win streak, but it's hard to not feel positive about where the Red Sox currently stand. Where are you at with this young core and the organization as a whole, just moving forward with these young guys? Because, I mean, they do look like they have a crop of 4 guys here that we all know, with Rafaela, Campbell, Anthony, and Meyer, but they look like they're going to at least get 2 really good players out of this, and possibly 4 solid or better starting players on their team.
I am very pleased, and I'm very optimistic about where they're headed long term. I think that to me is unquestioned, especially with Cedar Rafaela's his improvement with the bat specifically. Now because with Rafaela, he's hit the ball hard all year. The contact metrics have all said that he's hit the crap out of the ball the whole year. But early in the year, you know how Fenway Park's set up. Right center field, the triangle, the bullpen out in right field it's not easy for a right-handed hitter to JD Martinez and guys like that make it look easy. And So the balls that Rafaela was hitting hard earlier in the year were 380-foot flyouts to right center. And within a month, he was able to make the adjustment in game to get back to pull and lift and use the monster, and that's all he's done. I mean, I think the pull air percentage has gone from, I think, around 10% early in the year to since then, I think he's doing it like a quarter of the time, like 23 to 25%, which is a humongous difference. And with the defense that he gives you in center field, I mean, that is literally the fact that, and he chases a lot, he swings at everything. He is basically the identical profile to Pete Crow Armstrong if he can sustain these improvements. So I think it's hard not to be excited about that. I think Wilyer Bray is really good. And I think I'm encouraged with how Meyer's played so far. Even though the numbers don't look great, he's hitting the ball hard. He's playing really good defense at third base and second base. And I think Roman Anthony, the fact that he's a 21-year-old and the fact he started a little slow, but I think he's hitting like 280 now with an OBP of like 350, 360 for a guy that just turned 21 is just outrageous. He's going to be a superstar in the game. So I'm pleased with what they're going, what it looks like. The Red Sox are headed long term, but I'm not super optimistic about this season in particular because they ripped off those 10 or 11 straight games, and it's just they're young and they're going to be inconsistent, and they all got hot at the same time and they're just kicking the snot out of people. And now they're facing the Cubs and the Phillies and Christopher Sanchez in the second game. I mean, he's phenomenal. He shuts them down. Like, Wheeler wasn't great early on in his outing against them, and the Red Sox only got one run, and then Wheeler settled in, and it was over for that. But it's not going to get easier. They're playing the Dodgers this weekend. I just am not as big of a believer in their offense. I think sustaining. If they make the playoffs, can they get hot and make a run? Sure, they can. But I don't think their offense as of right now, especially without Rafael Devers, is going to be consistent enough to win. And the guys that they got back in the Rafael Devers deal, the early returns on them have not been great. So I think I'm still vehemently against the decision to trade him, and for many reasons. But I think that's what I'm very optimistic on them long term. I don't want that to get twisted, but I think this year I'm not. I mean, and if they trade for Joe Ryan at the deadline, maybe that'll be a little different. But I'm not. I think the offense is going to be a little too up and down and too inconsistent for me to label them as a World Series threat this year.
Not to go all the way back to the Devers trade because it's so far behind us now. Mm-hmm. But when it first broke, we jumped on immediately, did a live stream, and we had Jack Lydon come on, and we all agreed. And I just want to know if you agree with it. Was that not an off-season trade to make for Boston? I'm fine with getting rid of Devers at some point if you really wanted to, if the relationship was really that sour and it just had to be done and you want to commit to these young guys, fine. But that feels like a November trade. You call all 29 other teams and figure out where you're going to just get a massive return. Because the return they got, it felt like, we compared it to the Luka Doncic trade, it felt like they called one team. And they were like, what would you give Devers? And they said, all right, we're going to do it because we want to get rid of him. I just did not think they went about that the right way.
They certainly didn't go about it the right way. There's no question there. As far as the timing of the trade, I do think it would have been better off in the off season. I think the return of it is, I'm not so upset as to, they could have gotten more. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they could have gotten that much more because the contract is by every because I guess to explain it simply, the models don't think Devers is going to age well. And the reason is, and you know how I mentioned before about Jones and do guys have success in the big leagues who whiff a lot against fastballs, and I'm mentioning Devers with that. The problem is Devers you can do that if you have elite bat speed, which Devers does. And when that starts to go a little bit, it it's hard to recover from it because especially when you don't hit fastballs that great to begin with, and he doesn't give you much defensively. Um, and so, from looking at it from another team's perspective, I can understand why they don't want it. That especially when the Giants took on the entire contract,
Mhm.
I can understand why the return was what it was. But I'm more of the opinion of, okay, if that's the if that's going to be the best possible return you can get, that is not worth it. I would rather just have Rafael Devers.
Yeah.
Even like, yeah, is the contract good? No. Is it going to age well? No. But but at this point, I'm sorry, they have a middle of the pack payroll in baseball. I don't want to hear about contract value
Mhm.
because I look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers, as great as they are at a lot of things, they paid a lot. They paid a lot of money to a lot of people that are not going to age well. The Tanner Scott contract does not look good right now.
Looks so
It's
bad.
it does not. Like so, and but guess what? No one cares because they do a lot of other things well, and they're like, all right, whatever, we're going to luxury tax anyway. So that's my other thing, that the Red Sox, if you're that concerned about the contract, it's not like it will cripple. There are certain franchises where a contract like that will cripple them. The Red Sox should it, John Henry might act like it is. It should not
Mhm.
be.
No, it
It
shouldn't be.
should not. It should not cripple. They weren't in the luxury tax this year. They were not. They're not even close now. And if they don't use that money to extend Alex Bregman, then we know that what kind of ownership group runs the show here.
Earlier in the year, one of my takes that I really wanted to go back on now is I said I don't think Cora should be considered as one of those elite managers that really affect the daily, development of their club. And I totally have to go back on that now because he's once again showing me a lot of positives with developing the players and throughout the season
Mm-hmm.
how they've gotten better. This is a question that Mike and I have all the time on this show. When a player gets to the major leagues, or when a player is just in high AAA or something, and whether they work out or they don't work out, can you credit the manager? Can you credit the front office? Like, who are the main components in that development process? Because we sit here and like rip Aaron Boone and Carlos Mendoza, but are they even involved in the player development when they come through as a big prospect to the major leagues? Who is responsible for that?
It's not an easy answer, and it's not going to be. It's not a black and white answer. I think the manager does have a little bit, for sure, and as far as getting the best out of the talent, and maximizing their spot in the lineup, the position they play defensively, or anything like that. I do. I That's where the manager can have some impact, but as far as to use an example of Volpe, do I place any blame on Aaron Boone for Anthony Volpe's base running going down or his defense going down? I don't. I think baseball is such an individualized game that, especially when you get to the big leagues, a lot of it, like there's a ton of coaches and support staff and analytics guys and player development guys. There's just so many people that are involved in that are involved in trying to make a top prospect, I guess, to use your example, try and maximize their talents. The manager is certainly a part of that, but I don't think that. I don't think that I don't think that they're like an overwhelming slice of that pie. I guess is the best way to say. Like there's certainly a part of it, and I think there are certain managers who deserve credit for the way that they bring along young guys. But I don't think it's make or break. Like I think Davey Martinez in Washington is not a good manager. It doesn't impact James Wood. James Wood
Mhm.
is still awesome. So I think it's a little bit, but I don't think it's that much.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. It's good insight. Two quick topics to wrap up. A couple Mets
Yeah.
guys, and then we'll talk Brew Crew. But the Mets, I don't know how well versed you are on their young players. Mark Vientos sucks this year. He's so bad. And last year, he was awesome. We loved him. And this year, like, I picked him as one of those guys to just set the world on fire, and it was going to be awesome with Soto and Pete and Lindor and Nimmo in that lineup together with Vientos wedged somewhere in between, and he's horrid. They can't even play him. So what should we make of Mark Vientos, and what should Mets fans make? Is last year the outlier, or do you just not know enough about his case here to make an assessment?
Well, Vientos is again one of those kind of late bloomers in the sense that he was in that in between quad A type of player for a while, where he would come up to the big leagues and he would really struggle. He would go to AAA and he would rake. He'd come back up to the big leagues, he wouldn't hit very well. He'd go back to AAA and rake. And you just sometimes you don't really know what to do with those type of guys. I don't think Vientos is as bad as he's been this year, but I also don't think he's as good as he was last year. I think it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I think Vientos is more in the middle. But the difference is like a guy I think of similarly, like offensively, is Duran and Vientos, and in the sense that Duran was kind of in that same Mark Vientos spot where he was doing really well in AAA and he just couldn't get it going at the big league level, and he would just kind of bounce back and forth until he really figured it out. Duran hasn't had the greatest offensive year, but he does other things. He gives you help defensively. He's a madman on the bases. And Vientos in a very bat dependent profile, that's what scares me a little bit, because even if he kind of plateaus out as a 115 WRC plus guy as a third baseman, like that's valuable and fine. But I think that in a situation like the Mets, where they're going to, like, they'll give their prospects a chance to play, but you don't have very long to figure it out, or else they have the money to find more of a sure thing in your spot. So I think Vientos will be fine ultimately in his career, but I think it's fair to say that New York and the Mets, that might not be the place long term, that he might flourish somewhere else in a more of a low pressure, low stakes type of environment that he's going to play every day.
Francisco Alvarez came up as one of the top. He was the top prospect in baseball when the Mets called him up. I thought that, once again, while being casual, number one overall prospect on Alvarez felt a little rich always, but he was that talented regardless. He deserved to be at the top of every list in that top 10, top 5. Are we like, when a player gets to this point where he's sitting in AAA now for a few weeks and he's hitting well in AAA, it's the same thing that you just described with Vientos, where it struggles in the bigs, hit well in AAA. Should Mets fans be kind of out on Alvarez at this point? It seems like the organization's okay with Terens as the catcher every day because he is so good defensively, but Alvarez, like this case, it just feels like a lost cause for me as an outsider. Should Mets fans feel that way?
I actually take the opposite view. I think Alvarez is. I think there's a lot to be excited with Alvarez. It certainly hasn't been a smooth road, but especially in AAA and the quick and his very, I think, first couple games in the big leagues back, he's hit for a lot of power. And that to me is the thing with Francisco Alvarez, is he's got to hit for power, because he's not going and he, again, that similar to what we're talking about with VOLPE, there was never a point where he's going to be a high average hitter. It's just not his profile. But in AAA, went off to a little bit of a slow start. He was striking out a lot, but he was hitting home runs. And so far, at least briefly, in the big leagues, he's kind of continued that power surge. And so honestly, and he's a pretty good defensive, at least the numbers wise, he used to be very good defensively, and now he's kind of just average. I think with more consistent playing time, he can get back to that. And I think looking at a profile of a catcher who can hit for power, who can play above average defense, I think the raw tools and the skills and talents are there. I So personally, I'm actually a bigger fan of Alvarez than most. I think, in this next big league stint will certainly be really important, but I think I think the idea of him hitting for power, because early when he was struggling, he was not hitting for power, and then he just gives you nothing. And that's when you're like, all right, then I'd rather go with the safer option of Torrens, which I totally understood. But I think Alvarez. I'm pretty high on him long term. I think this will be a good. I think the AAA reset was good for him, and I think he's going to get back closer to what he was, and I think he's going to carve out a pretty solid career. I like Alvarez personally.
Let's jump to Brew Crew here as we wrap it up. The Brewers is as awesome as any story in baseball this year. They lose Devin Williams and Willy Adames in the offseason, and they're better than they were last year. And they didn't really get a return for either of those players. Obviously, Adames left as a free agent, but Williams, was Nestor and Durbin really a win now return at the time? Did we really feel that way? I don't think anybody felt that way. Felt like a net loss in the immediate future for Milwaukee, and it's almost been the opposite for them as we sit here today. But the influx of youth is so awesome in Milwaukee. Chourio is going to be one of the league's stars for a really long time, only 21 years old still, and he's really blossomed this year. And overall, just the special vibe that you get with the Brewers is unique to them this year. What's been special about this group, and do you think that they're World Series contenders?
I do. I think the Brewers are definitely World Series contenders, and what they do such a good job of. And even though as you mentioned, Kevin, they lost Devin Williams, and Durbin has been a nice return for them, and Cortez has barely pitched. But the way that the Brewers develop pitching, there's just no replacement for it. I mean, their pitching development is incredible, and the starting rotation that they've had. Look what they've done with Quinn Priester. It's unbelievable what they've gotten. And he's turned a guy that couldn't miss any bats, and recently he's been getting a lot of strikeouts. I don't think he's a guy that's going to consistently post high K numbers throughout his career, but he's throwing strikes. And the fact that and he's young, controllable. The Brewers have just done it again, and they no matter the closers that they lose, they always have someone ready to fill. And it's just the reality of, hey, we're going to pick and choose where we spend our money, and analytically, spending money on a closer is usually not the right move. And the Brewers know that. And so they're not willing to pay Williams an arbitration, because the arbitration system really it really favors and provides more value to saves, which is outdated and ridiculous, but that's the system it is. So they say we can use that money somewhere else. But yeah, the pitching is so good. And the fact that Woodruff has been money since he's come back, and it's so crazy. Their pitching is so crazy that you look in the minor leagues in the starting rotation with their AAA team, the Nashville Sounds. They have Logan Henderson, who's a top prospect. Stuff is is phenomenal. He would be in the big league rotation for most teams in the league. He's still hanging in AAA, dominating. They had Chad Patrick, who, when they had injuries earlier in the year, they kind of were like, all right, you're a starting pitcher, and we think you could be okay. So congratulations, you get half a season. And he was really good for 15, 16 starts. Chad Patrick had a 3.4 ERA or something like that. And it was all legit. The peripherals said it was legit. Guess what? All the guys come back. They just have no room for him. And you look and okay, who has options? Who can we do something with? Sorry, Chad, I guess you're going to have to go to AAA and dominate. And I mean, Tobias Meyer is probably a step below those two, but he's a guy who's had big league success before too. He's in their trip. So they have 8 guys that I'd feel comfortable throwing out on a big league mound. And that's just a luxury that not many teams have. And they've gotten just enough on the offensive side. The thing that Pat Murphy does better than anybody in the league is he teaches base running to an elite level. Whether it's stolen bases, going first to third, taking the right risks. The analytics say that even if you're going to get thrown out, even if you get thrown out sometimes, taking the risk and trying to take the extra base is more often than not worth it when you do it. And obviously you don't want to make the last out at third or anything like that. Those selective risks. and they do it better than anybody. They run the bases so well. They throw strikes. I mean, Mizorowski is unbelievable that they've taught him how to throw strikes. And he's just dominant. And I mean, because I think you'll get to a point where they have enough starting pitching depth that I think they're going to be really careful with Mizorowski's innings. You start to see it a little bit in his last start against Seattle, where I think he only went like 65, 70 pitches, and that was planned. I think to protect his innings, I think come postseason time, you're going to see Jacob Mizorowski as a multi-inning relief monster in that bullpen. And they have plenty of starting pitching depth as well. I know the Brewers have a reputation of they have a great regular season, they win the NL Central, and they lose in the wild card round, or they lose in the division series, except for the 1 year that they made the NLCS. I think this team's a little different. I'm really high on them, and they have so much pitching. And I mean, can you imagine Jacob Mizorowski as a multi-inning postseason bullpen weapon? I think that's where that's headed.
That's a great point. We spoke about it last week on this, or right after the All-Star break. So yeah, last week. But does Milwaukee, with the pitching depth that you mentioned, the Brewers feel like a team in the NL that have to go after a bat at the deadline? Whether that's going to be Josh Naylor, Ryan O'Hearn, Willie Castro, like whoever they want it to be, because I don't think that they would be a player for Suarez or one of the third basemen with Durbin there at third, but whoever they are interested in, it feels like they have to make the big move, because you have to anticipate the Dodgers getting better at the deadline. You have to anticipate the Padres getting better at the deadline. We already see the Ozuna rumors, and you have to be expecting the Cubs to be all in this year on their season. And that's not to mention the Phillies and Mets. So the Brewers just have to be all in a way that they usually aren't at the deadline.
And I think there's a good chance they will be, because they have the assets to make a move. And do I think it's Suarez? Probably not. Because of how well Durbin's playing number one. I think you could fudge with it a little bit, I don't know if you want to make him DH or something like that. But I definitely do think that the Brewers, they do need a power bat where they want to, because Rhys Hoskins is hurt now with Milwaukee. I think he's still going to be out for a little bit. So they definitely need a first baseman. Granted, Andrew Vaughn has gone from being the worst, one of the worst players in all of baseball with the White Sox, does okay in AAA with the Brewers after getting traded, and he's been insane. So we'll see how legit that is, I guess, over the next 8 or 9 days or so leading up to the deadline. But I think they got to be in on Ryan O'Hearn. They definitely need a power bat or two to help supplement, especially come postseason time, when and that's the big reason that come playoff time, and you're facing the best stuff and the best pitchers on the other team, stringing singles together is a lot tougher. And that's where the Brewers have fallen, why the Brewers have fallen short in the playoffs. Hitting home runs wins in the playoffs. And I do think that I still think that they can make a run, even in this more contact, more speed based team. But you do need you do need a couple power bats to help supplement. And I think that's got to be their main thing at the deadline. And they have plenty of starting. There are teams who would do anything to get Chad Patrick in their rotation, or Logan Henderson. Henderson would cost more, because I think Patrick's 26, but they have the depth to do it. I think they're a fascinating player at the deadline, because they have a loaded system.
All right, Will, I'm not going to take any more of your time today, because I've already taken way too much of it. I asked you for a half hour. We're on first hour and 18th minute right now. So
that's okay.
Good chat today. Thanks for doing it. Reminder to all of our listeners, you can find Will at prospectslive.com. You can also find him at Will_Thompson33 on Twitter. We are not doing any Burrows episodes this week. Mike is on vacation. I'll be on vacation next week. We're still going to try to do something for the deadline. And you can check out everything we do: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, TikTok. The whole drill. Giuseppe did a new episode yesterday of No Good Takes, so you can check that out. It's still going to hold up today, even though he talked a little bit about the Yankee game 2 nights ago. Whatever. Great episode. Watch it, and I will see you in the next one. Will, thanks again so much, man. Awesome time.